friends, welcome back to the den for today's shave, which is brought to us by Mitchell's Wool Fat. And we'll be using some of my new old stock ones. This is a Beaujeu Dumontel. This is made in Thiers, France. Classic French razor. We got the soap blooming, so I'll dump the water out into the bowl, and we're just going to go ahead and load and talk a little bit about today's history. Today's history is a little weird one. It caused me to kind of do a little extra research and looking at about stuff, because this is a kind of a off the weeds, in the weeds kind of a history story. And it doesn't have any real importance, but it just was weird enough that I figured I would say something about it. This is comes from a letter that George Washington wrote to Congress? No, Safety Committee. I'm not sure. The Safety Committee was in Hartford, Connecticut. I don't know why Hartford, Connecticut was kind of a place they did stuff, but he was writing a letter about this fella, Major French. Well, you might find a mention of him somewhere, and it was just in passing that I ran across him. Well, I had to write some of it down so that I won't lose track of it. But in 1775, a lot of stuff was going on. Boston was under siege, and there's little skirmishes and weird stuff happening all along there. And George is fighting to get his army kind of squared away, to make an army of what he had, because he mostly just had a gaggle of militia people. And along comes this joker. What was his name? His name, well, Major John French of Braintree, Massachusetts. He was a major in the Massachusetts militia, not directly in George's chain of command, but he was close enough and in there with the guys that he was causing trouble. Now, what George ran into problems quite a bit when he was pulling the army together was there were a lot of guys in the militia that got their positions as political appointees. And this Major John French was one of them. Anyway, John French thought he was cleverer and smarter than everybody else. In my career, sometimes you get these from guys fresh out of West Point. They come in, look at me, West Point graduate, and I was not. I came up through the ranks, kind of old school. So we have these fellas coming in thinking they're all that in a bag of chips. Well, what happened with French was he's kind of a jerk, for lack of a better thing. I'll read what the story says here. September 75. Well, that was, yeah, we talked about that. Now, George was usually a little bit more diplomatic when he would write letters, and especially when he was complaining about one thing or another, because he really wanted to get things scored away for what he knew was going to be a tough battle. Well, this guy, he wrote a letter and he said, he described his French as busy, meddling, and troublesome. He spread discouraging talk and threw cold water on every plan and seemed to relish in stirring up arguments. Probably have people like that when you work in an office. You're going to have people like that. Proof positive that there were Karens clear back to the beginning of time. Well, this guy was he went on to describe French's demeanor as completely lacking in any I read it, but I don't remember exactly his exact word. The guy was basically not friendly towards George, even though George was a superior officer. I tagged myself. And being kind of a big ball of negativity in staff meetings and stuff. But what I think what really bummed George out the most was that he wasn't in his chain of command, so he couldn't do anything about it. He couldn't dress him down, so he complained about him in this letter. And this guy is a real nuisance and undermining my efforts to bring things together and create your army. We need to do something about this guy. So, what this letter today that we're reading about just kind of shows us that, and this is not the first run-in George is going to have with militia people, political appointees, and not people from within the ranks coming up, because he's trying to build a cohesive force. And when you have somebody who's not invested in, boy, this thing is sharp. Not invested in building up his men or anything, and just go around trying to look good and trying to look smarter than everybody else in the staff meeting. It's a problem. And what happened to this guy? Had to do a little bit more digging. Couldn't find anything specifically, but what records I was able to find was that eventually the Massachusetts militia, or the people that in this guy's chain of command, got absorbed into the Continental Army. And at that point then, George had the power to grant commissions to officers and kind of pick, the officers for these, for the Continental Army. And I guess Major French didn't make the list, so he kind of faded into obscurity and was never heard from again. So I hope that, like this Major French, and in your meetings with people in your chain of command, the troublesome ones eventually go away and you don't have to deal with them anymore. Because frankly, when you're coming into a war and you see how big it's going to be, George must have had some premonition it was going to be something. He didn't really have. I'm trying to open up a new bottle of Thiers today. Finally breaking into it, and went to squeeze it and nothing happened because, well, there's a stopper on this. have one more bottle of this. This should last me, oh, given how the last bottle lasted, probably another 3 or 4 years. I'm sparing with it. Aftershave. What are we gonna use? Well, here's Imaginarium left over from yesterday's shave. I'll just borrow some of that. Squeeze a little bit out there. This is good stuff. Thank you for making that for our meetup. A little bit of citrusy, musky kind of goodness. Sits right well on top of the Mitchell's wool fat. Pretty good. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, please like, subscribe if you're so inclined. I'm Major Rich. You find me at theshavingconjurer.com and my YouTube channel, Safety Cat Studios on YouTube. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.